I'm hitting you smack, smack. I'm sticking you smack lips to stack chips, all with the lyrical technique.
So if you remember, back in May, we opened entries for our Board Games and Debauchery contest. So Game of the Week is really a story fest this time out. 4 different answers to the question, what happens when chemically altered people play board games or games of any kind? Our first answer comes from Mr. Matt Thrower. You may have met Matt if you read board game reviews in places like IGN or GamesRadar.com. He's a UK-based guy who won this year's contest with a story about playing chess on LSD. It goes like this. All that night there had been twice as many stars as usual. At one point, lying on the warm sand of a golf course bunker and giggling at the splendor of it, I had genuinely believed myself to be at the center of the cosmos, nothing but a void filled with twinkling points of celestial light beneath me. Such is the awesome power of LSD. Now, the summer dawn heralded a new day and the slow, sad return of reality. Back in the shelter of the flat, what better way to reconcile our blown minds to the inevitable than with a nice game of chess? So we get out the set, geometric pieces carved from soapstone, smooth and cool and reassuringly solid against our disordered senses. And somewhere in whatever brain sits just above the primal lizard, we manage to dredge out the correct way to set up a chessboard. Pawns in front, bracketed by rooks, all is good with the world. Thus armored, we begin to play. Familiar routines reasserting themselves, we each push a pawn in the traditional opening to the dance. I grasp for what comes next. Knights can jump over pawns, right? So my knight jumps over the pawn. Then I do the same with the other knight, for the pleasure of the symmetry. Now I should be able to move a bishop or a rook, but I cannot. My line of pawns lies static, broken only by the single advancing soldier. Something is wrong. But what? Slowly it dawns on me that when knights jump over pawns, it's not supposed to be any pawn of my choosing. It's especially not supposed to be the one that I've pushed forward already, thrusting my brave cavalry way out to the front of the board, trying to check my opponent's king, but also adjacent to their pawn line. Oh no. Unless I move my knights, they'll be taken. Reaching to grab them back, 3 things occur to me in quick succession. Firstly, that we never agreed any friendly rules about takebacks. Second, that even if we had, there's probably some rule I've overlooked about not moving 2 pieces at once. Thirdly, the threat from my opponent's pawns is imaginary. They've all gone. Trying to focus on the wider board, I realized that in the space of my making 2 moves, all 8 of the enemy pawns have moved, as have some of mine, and are now making a delightful zigzag pattern of ebony and ivory along the outskirts of the board. It's a lovely pattern, the black and the white each reflecting the glow of the dawn in different intensities, the perfect spacing and juxtaposition of the diagonals so pleasing to the eye. It would be a shame to move them back, but how to replace them? Cigarettes would seem the obvious choice. My brand is Marlboro Lights, that of my friend is Lambert and Butler, so they'll be easy to tell apart. I begin to replace the missing pawns with tubes of tobacco, teetering dangerously on their filter tips. A careless sweep of a loose sleeve, and they are all scattered like 9-pins. Affronted, my opponent retrieves one of his pawns from the board, lights it, and begins to blow smoke rings. Or was it one of mine? I replace it with a lighter, but things are now getting out of hand. If bishops move on the diagonal, how is it that queens are supposed to move? This makes no sense. The rook is now a tube of Mentos. What on earth is going on here? The geometric pleasure of the line of pawns begins to look more and more like a sculpture. Soon we are collaborating, color matching the aesthetics of different pieces against different colored squares, against the rectangular lines of one another, against the makeshift detritus that now litters the board. The game completed, we sit back in the ever-lightening room, and reality still seems a very long way away. But even now, 30 years after that game, the question about it still haunts me. In the after-match discussion, how did we both end up agreeing that I'd lost? There you go. Bravo, Mr. Thrower. Per the terms of the contest, Matt will receive a copy of Dustin Hyman's story collection, Gutter Punks, and Breakup Gaming Society's 2024 cocktail booklet, Chaotic Shots and Cocktails That Will Hurt Your Friends. I would also urge you to follow Matt's work on IGN.com and GamesRadar.com. He's a lucid craftsman who does an exceptional job of showing you new board games, what they do, and where they fail or excel. Give my man's a read.